Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 768A, and today's date is September 17th, 2015, and the title of this episode is The Fed Just Gave Proof the Economy is Not Recovering. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Now, out in Canada, we see the situation continually getting worse as time goes on. I mean, we had housing prices that were hitting all-time highs. They have soaring household debt. And this is like a repeat of 2008. Actually, it's not just Canada. I mean, we look around the world, we look at Europe, Australia, US, and Canada. It's pretty much all the same. We're all just at different points right now. But we're starting to see the effects of this economy completely collapsing around us. And we understand that Canada has entered a recession. And we're starting to see that delinquencies are starting to increase at this time. There's a report that came out saying we're starting to see the impact of low oil prices in the West as these prices are forcing a new reality. On a demographic basis, the 90-plus day delinquency rate for Canadians age 65 plus rose for the first time since 2010. The rate increased by 2.4% this quarter versus a decrease of 5.1% in the previous quarter. So things are starting to reverse right now. And they're starting to see that their economy is like a ticking time bomb. Now, is this to blame? I mean, are we to blame Canada for all of this? No. This is a symptom of a bigger problem. And the main problem is the central bank. The main problem is the issuance of all this debt around the world. The main problem is a central bank where they're trying to reap all the profits and give nothing to the people. This system can't work this way. And they're just sucking up all the wealth at this point because they know what's coming. I mean, the Fed chickened out today and said, you know something? We're not going to raise interest rates. They have failed to raise the interest rates for the 55th consecutive time. What does that tell you? And they keep making the same excuses. Oh, we don't see enough inflation right now, but unemployment looks strong. It's getting stronger. It's very low right now. The economies will expand at a moderate pace. But we're just not ready. Maybe in October. Well, we understand right now that they cannot raise the interest rates. And if we get the signal that they're going to do it, that is the signal that this whole entire economy is ready to fall apart and they're getting ready to have that big event. That's the signal. Now, will it happen in any other way? Of course it might. There's always black swans. There's always things that they can't control. But their biggest thing is they want to control this. They're trying to kick the can down the street a little bit longer because they don't want to give up the power. They love being the reserve currency. They love being in control. They don't want to hand this control over to anyone else. And guess what? If the system dies, everything dies with it. We go to war. That's the answer. But one of the biggest stunners coming out of this meeting is that the Fed announced that it might go negative in rates. Maybe by the end of 2015 going into 2016. So they're going to go negative interest rates. I mean, look what they need to do to keep this system alive because the debt right now is unsustainable. It just cannot be sustained if they raise if there's any interest rate hike. It's impossible. They cannot happen. The housing market would completely fall apart. The emerging markets, all the emerging economies would be a complete disaster. Remember, China is a manufacturing powerhouse and they've been hoarding gold. The U.S. has no gold. Actually, JP Morgan is one delivery away from having their entire gold reserves emptied. So we see right now that this economy is not in a recovery. It's in a collapse. The Fed just proved it. the Fed showed us that, yeah, even with unemployment down at 5.1%, with all these great GDP numbers that are completely manipulated and revised and manipulated again and massaged, we're still not there. So when unemployment goes down to 4.9%, what in the world are they going to use as an excuse? Think about it. I mean, we're hearing all these layoffs from all these companies. Unicredit, Deutsche, JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Dell, Sony, and many others, tens of thousands of jobs. But the initial jobless claims fell 11,000 to 264,000 last week, hovering near its lowest level since 1973. I mean, does this even make sense to anybody? Of course it doesn't. But what's very interesting is the BLS had to admit that at least 208,000 total jobs were overestimated in the year ending March 2015. This is equivalent to eliminating nearly 1 month of job gains in the specified 12-month period and spread across the various months. So that's what they're admitting to. And we know they completely manipulate all the other numbers. So they overestimated 208,000 jobs. This whole unemployment number, you can't even believe it anymore. It's so full of holes. It's so fake. I mean, everything around us, all the indicators that we've been talking about, manufacturing, business inventories, industrial production, all the things that we talked about yesterday, going back to 2008 to the present, about student loans, about money printing, about how many people are out of the workforce. I mean, all of that is pointing to one thing and one thing only. A huge, gigantic bubble that will burst and it will collapse the entire system. Because that's what it is. I mean, the Philly Fed right now crashes to 31-month lows. The Philly Fed went from 8.3 to -6, missing expectations by the most in 4 years. Sounds like a recovery to me, doesn't it? I saw in the corporate media where they're saying that housing prices are starting to cool off in August. Well, remember, the corporate media is telling you things that have happened in the past. Housing prices started to cool back in April, May. We're in September now. There is no cooling. The whole thing is collapsing. And we see mortgage applications down by 17%, and housing starts declined to a 3-month low. So what are we seeing here? We're seeing the housing market starting to fall apart. Remember, the good season for housing is over. We're moving into the fall and winter. And during this whole summer period, housing never took off. Actually, prices have continually come down. Houses have been on the market longer and longer. It's not working. The bubble is at its maximum. It's ready to burst. The Northeast tumbled by 34%. I mean, this is just unbelievable what we're seeing right now. But they're still saying the housing market is strong. This is what a recovery looks like. When things fall apart, it means everything is fine. No, when things start to fall apart, that means things are going downhill very quickly. But they're not going to tell you this because they want you to believe in the recovery. They want you to believe that everything is fine. I mean, we see that the U.S. Department of Justice is never going after the big banks. Actually, they're just giving them a license to steal. They're saying that they're not going to go after any banks whatsoever. They're going to go after those people who took orders from the top. And we're going to go after those lackeys who followed the orders. Those are the people we need to go after, not the CEOs, not the elite of the banks. It makes no sense. It's like in the armed forces. Let's not go after the person that gave the orders. Let's go after the person that followed the orders. That's not going to the heart of the problem. Well, this is what you see in a fascist country. The head of corporations get a free pass. All the low-level people, they're the ones who get caught up in it. They're the ones that are expendable. This is what we're seeing right now. And this is going to continue because we see with all the laws and everything they're passing, more and more companies, the central banks, are controlling what is going on in this country. And they're continually getting larger. Their presence is getting bigger in government. And the two are intertwined right now. And this spells a complete disaster. Now we see gold is continually suppressed. I mean, it pops up 10, 12, dollars. It's then pushed down another 10, 12 dollars. So it's really flatlined at this point. But when we look around the world, we see other countries where their currencies have been devalued. And we see in those countries, gold has risen to near record highs in many of these countries. And what we're seeing is a lot of people in the Middle East, South Africa, Brazil, Argentina, they're all protecting themselves and they're continually purchasing precious metals. Because as your currency is devalued, your currency becomes worthless, they realize they rather have the precious metals than have the paper and ink. Now, here in the United States, we have not experienced this yet. We don't understand. Most people don't understand this yet. But when the currency loses its value, it's going to be worth absolutely nothing. And there's many countries that have already seen this. And when the petrodollar completely implodes on itself, and the countries realize we don't have to keep this in reserves and we don't need to keep the treasuries anymore, they're going to unload all of it. And that's going to flood the United States. That means there's going to be a lot more dollars in circulation. When there's a lot more dollars in circulation, guess what? The value of the dollar decreases. And this is what's going to happen when this entire system comes down. And this is why everyone needs to continually get gold and silver. If you can't afford gold, I would get silver. I buy a lot more silver than I do gold because I just don't have the funds to purchase. I mean, I would love to purchase 10, 20 ounces of gold, but I just can't do it. So I buy silver because it's a lot cheaper right now. And I just stock up on that. And every once in a while, I'll buy 5 grams, 2 grams of gold interwoven into my purchase just to make sure that I do have some. But I am really more stocked up on silver right now. Now, those people who are still making a living, those people who are still bringing in really good money, I would purchase gold. And if you can only do silver, get silver because that paper and ink is going to be worth absolutely nothing. At least you have the silver. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.